just believe in the power of healing and restoration. And I know that if we can just come together and speak about the hard things, we can finally begin to heal. So, this is where we heal.
Well, hello and welcome to This Is Where We Heal. Today I have a guest. His name is Adam. Is it Allred?
Allred, yeah.
Allred. Oh, okay. That makes more sense now. You are an influencer. You do podcasting as well. Do you have your own podcast, Adam?
We're launching a show next month. We were doing one during the summertime with a bunch of guys around the fire, and we're going to do something similar to that in a month. But
yes, I loved that, by the way. I think that's so good, like to have those groups together like that for men, to just like share and be open and all of that. I think
it's
that's
awesome.
really
like we get a growing group of guys that want to be at the fire, and there's not enough space. It's kind of sad.
Oh, that is sad, but that's
we have
so
to rotate,
awesome.
guys. We include everybody, but we just have to rotate.
Oh man, that's how you know you're doing it right. I mean, if you have a wait list, that's a good sign. But you also the founder of, is it DGHBoy Nation or DH?
Yep.
Okay, can you explain what that is really quick?
So DGHBoy, I'm going to turn the hat forward for a second. I'm not trying to brand myself on your podcast. I'm just here for the good conversation. But yeah, so DGHBoy is we just did a soft launch. We're getting more into launching this. It's just a men's coaching program. So there's a lot of guys that have reached out to me. Do you do any mentorship? And so we put together a really dynamic, albeit in its infant stage where we're still working out the kinks, but a pretty dynamic accountability program, training program and stuff for guys to really put together a better framework in which to navigate this complex modern world that we live in.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's so necessary too. You know, I think men, like, they're resistant to therapy and support groups and things like that. So if you can paint it in a way that actually feels still like it's a masculine resource, I think that's really good.
Yeah. And guys, we talk differently too. I personally think I've never personally been to therapy, but I've been to marriage counseling in my first marriage, and it doesn't fit for most men. It's not helpful. I'm not saying that entirely. I'm sure there's exceptions, but generally speaking, I don't think most guys get a lot out of going to therapy, but they do get a lot about going and hanging out with their friends. And that's a better therapy session for a guy when he has good friends than anything I think he's going to get, sitting on someone's couch and pouring out all of his feelings and emotions.
Right. 100%. They actually say that your support group is actually more effective than even therapy. So as long as you have a good support group, a lot of times you don't necessarily even need to go to therapy. So
I agree. And I think the problem is that most people don't have good support groups nowadays. And that's the biggest issue that we're facing. And so they have no other option except to go to therapy when they're having all kinds of issues that they're dealing with. And sadly, I don't think it's super effective. And it's better than nothing probably, but I don't think it actually helps move the needle.
Right. I totally agree. Well, one of the main reasons I was drawn to your social media and having you on today was because you talk a lot about masculinity, and not in a toxic way, which I think is really, really inspiring and helpful to just like the culture that we live in and the way that masculinity has kind of been framed as like the alpha male who doesn't need anyone, who has, multiple women in their life, who's just making it big by grinding every day. And I'm sure that works for some people, but it's not a healthy balance of what connection and life should look like, I don't think. And so I love that you talk a lot about that as far as how it relates to your marriage, how it relates to being a father, how it relates to the way that you show up in the world for your friends and to the people that you support and that support you. And I really want to dive into that today because I think that reframing the thought of the idea of masculinity can really change the culture and help men fully, truly become masculine in a way that not only benefits them, but benefits the people in their lives too. And so
Ashley, I'm grateful to be on this show with you. And I just met you right now, other than us communicating on social media. Our first time meeting. But the world, we need more women like you. We need this kind of conversation, and we need more women trying to understand where men are coming from and vice versa. We need more men that are trying to understand where women are coming from. So I love these types of collaborations. They're like one of my favorite things to do because I think they actually help move the needle and make things better.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've told other people this. When I first started my podcast, it was focused on healing from domestic violence and sexual assault, which were two things that I experienced in my life. And it made it really hard for me to have relationships with men and to form trust in with when it came to masculine men. And I've learned through my experience of working through those things that what happens a lot is that all men get pegged as just bad, as just evil, as just selfish, as just, users and takers. But I don't feel that way. Even with my own experience and the things that I've had to endure and heal from, I still know that there are good men. I've still had good men in my life. And so I hate the divide that happens in that setting, because I don't think there's any way to even overcome domestic violence or violence in men until we mend the bridge between the masculine and the feminine. And so that's why I'm so excited to have you on today, because I think you're doing a really great job of being that and talking about that and opening those doors.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that sword definitely cuts both ways. I know in this space, I've been doing influencing, for lack of a better word for it, for about a year and a half now. I just started kind of sharing my thoughts on social media. I was genuinely surprised. I still am surprised that anybody listens to me. I mean, I do business as my main career, and it's in door-to-door sales. So I'm kind of like a one-trick pony, but I know how to be a dude, I guess, because I'm talking about stuff that resonated with a lot of guys. And I guess that's the only thing I'm an expert at, is knocking doors and building my businesses and being a guy. And so I'm still surprised people listen to me, because I'm just a dude sharing my thoughts. It's shocking still a little bit, but it's also humbling, and it's a great responsibility. But that sword cuts both ways, because a lot of men experience a different type of damage from females. And I hear about this all the time. And then you have the exact same thing occurring, where you have men that just become bitter at all women, and all women are now labeled as bad because they went through a horrible marriage and they had a horrible divorce, and now they're completely financially wrecked, and they blame all women for that. And women do the same thing to men. And so being able to recognize that we're, generally speaking, most men and most women are pretty dang good people. And there are bad apples, there's bad eggs in every group, but being able to separate those out from the majority so that we can have healthy conversations and talk about how to fix these things, I think is probably one of the most important things that we can do right now in society, honestly. This division is killing us.
Oh, it totally is. I mean, it throws the balance off of everything, even just family life, and I'm not necessarily like stuck on traditional values, but I do lean towards them for sure. But they're just like, as time goes on, I just see them getting thrown out the window more and more, and it dysregulates the whole entire system, for couples.
I think, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going.
No, go ahead. That was it.
Well, and I think one of the things that we've lost a lot in this modern world, the complex world that we live in, is that, our primary responsibility as humans is the same as it's always been, as every other species on the planet, which is to survive and reproduce, and to do that, in our case, as well as a lot of other species that exist on this earth, to raise our children well. And this division is ultimately hurting the children, which is destroying the future. And this is why it's so important that we start doing this kind of heavy lifting right now to reconcile some of the differences that we've seen infused over the last handful of decades or century or whatever that is. Because we got to do it. We have to do it for the children. We got to come together and figure out how to make this world a better place for those that are coming up on our watch.
Yeah, we're here to plant those seeds, for the harvest that comes. So I want to dive into it then. And I want to know, what is true masculinity? What does that look like in a man? Just the general definition of what you would have for that.
So my definition for masculinity is a man who has the ability to go into the world and impose his will on the world. And there's two sides of that coin. There's toxic masculinity and there's healthy masculinity. Toxic masculinity is going to do that for selfish reasons. There's a lot of masculine men. They're not good men. They're masculine men. They go out, they can impose their will in the world. They can get what they want out of the world, but they're doing it for their own self-gratification. Healthy masculinity is going into the world to make it a better place, to take care of those who are on your watch, to carve out a safe space for your family, for your wife, and for your children, and to go into this crazy world that we live in and speak the truth and be honest and be a strong source for good and to serve and to be useful. Like, that's what healthy masculinity looks like. So they both start with the same starting point. And in between that spectrum, you have toxic people say toxic masculinity. That's fine. You have healthy masculinity. And then in between that right now, what we're seeing, and I think has been a growing number over the years, is this whole generation of lost boys that are neither one of those. They don't have the ability. It's the nice guy syndrome. They have no ability to impose their will on the world. They're basically just showing up and kind of going through levels of responsibility that somebody else has handed to them. It's like the Walking Dead or a Lost Boy analogy, where they don't know how to like change their circumstances at all. And those guys, they don't have any respect for themselves. Mm-hmm. And because they have no respect for themselves, they never get respect from anybody else, particularly from the women in their lives. Because a woman, and I'm curious your take on this, but my observation, my experience has been that a woman is only attracted to a man that she respects. And she's only going to respect a man who respects himself, who's like, hey, won't tolerate bullshit, is not going to put up with nonsense, and knows who he is, knows what his purpose is, and is getting after it. And that's a man that a woman can respect and be attracted to. But there are so many guys right now that don't understand that. And that's part of the messaging that I've been trying to share on social media, is trying to wake guys up to that. Like, yo, your purpose is not a woman. Your purpose is not all of these other things. Your purpose is to be the strongest, most powerful, vibrant version of yourself. And everything else, you have these other quests in life, including being a good husband and being a good father and being a good provider and all these other aspects of masculinity that we can dive into. But ultimately, your primary purpose, the thing that you have the sole control over, is yourself and being the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I think that goes for men and women too. But I would totally agree that I've said this many times, a woman's greatest need in any connection or relationship is safety. And not just physical safety, but emotional safety. And what happens with the nice guy is that a woman goes into a relationship with the nice guy and she sees the way that his boundaries are constantly being, compromised in every area of his life. And then the safety is gone. There's no safety, because even if that person is showing up and they're consistent with her and they're nice and they are willing to do things for her, they're not showing sovereignty within themselves. And so the woman doesn't feel safe with them out in the world either. Because if a woman can walk all over your boundaries and take advantage of you and receive from you, and know that she doesn't have to give anything, she's not going to trust you out in the world. So I totally agree that. And there's a difference between the nice guy and a kind guy. A kind guy still has the boundaries. A kind guy does things for other people because it's right, not because he feels obligated to or like he has to. A kind guy shows up with a quiet sense of confidence because he knows and trusts himself to do the right thing for the right reasons, but still have the boundaries in place to show up in the world as a masculine man. So I totally agree with all of that.
Yeah, and I think on some level, being nice is being dishonest. And that's one of the differences between being nice and being kind, is you're not honest about who you are or what you feel. You're allowing yourself to be walked all over because you're trying to keep the peace, which is not actually any sign of strength. It's a sign of weaknesses, which is what you're alluding to. I love the way you articulated that, by the way. But being nice is being weak, because on some level, you're not really being honest with yourself. And women, I think this is pretty common, and I'm curious your take on it. Women will shit test their men. We call it shit tests, like where they will test the boundaries. And I think they do that. I don't think that's a bad thing, honestly. I'm not saying that as a criticism, but women will say, okay, how strong is my man? How tough is my man? And they'll put out these tests to see how he's going to respond. And those things can be subtle or they can be big tests, but how the man responds to those types of those tests determines so much of how the relationship is going to go.
Oh, 100%. If I'm with someone and they allow other people to cross my boundaries, which the nice guy usually does because they're too afraid to stand up for themselves, let alone for you. They don't want any confrontation. They don't want to be involved in anything that makes them uncomfortable. So if they're letting other people cross my boundaries, that's my test. Like, and it's not even intentional. I think women do it unintentionally sometimes, where they just kind of want to see, they watch how you respond when you're in the world with them and the way that you respond to how people treat them. And a woman, again, safety, going back to safety, she wants to believe that if he had to, he would step in and protect me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to know, though, because obviously with masculinity, it doesn't mean that you can't compromise. It doesn't mean you're uncompromising. It doesn't mean you aren't negotiating. When you're in a relationship with a woman, yes, you have to have your individuality, but there also is and as you know, because you're married, there also has to be a level of like working with someone, and women and men are very different. And you've talked about this in one of your posts about how men are very logical and women are emotional. And so it can be hard to relate to one another. I want to know how that shows up in your relationship with your wife, because I see you do sweet things for her all the time. Like you had the video about getting her I think it was a card or a little notebook or something at the hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Which was so sweet. And it's like, there's so many guys that are going, I'm not going to do something like that. That's like, so, that's like a feminine thing to do. I disagree.
Yeah.
And I want to know more about that in your relationship with your wife and how that plays itself out.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking that question. So I'll start by one, I didn't understand this in my first marriage. So the first marriage for a lot of reasons was bad, but a lot of it was on me for not understanding these concepts like I do now and like we're talking about right now. But I remember when I was first dating my wife now, I've been married twice. So my wife now, I was with her in Mexico and we were at this pretty nice restaurant and I saw this woman come in and I was kind of just people watching and talking to her. And this woman comes in and she's got this like powerful boss babe energy. She's probably in her 50s. She was a little bit older, but she was attractive and she had like the Gucci bag on and she had this daughter that came walking in behind her that was just a smaller replica of her. And they just had this presence, so I'm kind of watching them because it's just this powerful presence that comes walking in the room. And behind him came the husband and father. He comes walking in and he didn't have that same kind of energy, but I watched him and they sat down at this table next to us. He was more subtle. And I saw they sat down next to us. And so I was like ear hustling their conversation. Like I was just kind of listening to this dynamic. And I saw how this man was able to manage that relationship so well. She had deference for him, even though she was this powerful woman. And even though he didn't necessarily come in with that same sort of energy, I could tell he knew how to communicate with her. He knew what her buttons were. He knew what levers to pull. He was capable of managing a healthy relationship with a strong woman. And I just thought it was so powerful to observe that. And it wasn't dominating. It was like I don't know. I'm a business guy. I think he was a business guy as well, just by the way that he talked and the way that he was managing things. Like he was aware of all the aspects of his relationship with his woman. He knew exactly who she was. He knew what worked and what didn't work. And he was imposing his will in the relationship, not in a dominant, tyrannical way. He wasn't controlling her or telling her what to do, but he knew how to manage that relationship with her in a way that helped her be her and be her healthiest, most powerful self, while at the same time not compromising himself at all. So I went into that, I was picking a lot of this stuff up going through the divorce and the few years that I was single before I got into this relationship, my marriage that I'm in now. But I observed that and I recognized one, my wife today is the most important person to me in the entire world. And my children are right next to it, right up there with her. But she's my most important relationship. And she's honestly the best person that I know. She's better than me in so many different aspects. So I love celebrating her. I love adoring her. And I love to just show appreciation for her and show her how much I love her. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I got a lot to work on, just like everybody does. I strive for that, right?
Right.
And that's not being a simp. That's not being a beta male. That's not being weak. That's a sign of strength. Now, the weakness would come if I just adored her and then tolerated disrespect and allowed her to cross boundaries with me. We all have to have boundaries. It's how we have to be healthy. That's the only way that we can be healthy. So I hold boundaries with my wife and she does with me as well, because that's a sign of a healthy relationship. And we have communication about these things, but it's always respectful and it's always from a place of support. And like you said, it's a place of compromise. You come together and you discuss issues and you have to have really clear communication about who you are and what you're looking for and who they are and what they're looking for and what you're trying to accomplish in your marriage. But adoring your wife, adoring this sacred responsibility and relationship that you have with another human being is a sign of power. It's a sign of strength. And I think it's a sign that you're healthy. If you can't appreciate the person that you're married to, that's a personal issue. You've got to figure that out. And that may mean you have to leave that relationship. There's some relationships that are just absolutely toxic and you got to have the cojones, the strength of character to say, hey, we're going to call it quits. That's part of being masculine and having boundaries. But otherwise, you need to be in that relationship and to make it work, which means you have to find the good in that person. You got to constantly celebrate that. You got to be that person's biggest cheerleader. My wife is my biggest cheerleader. She gasses me up. She's constantly put me back together when I come home from a long day of work. And I try to do the exact same thing for her. I try to come home and be involved with the kids, involved with her, making sure I'm spending time with her, making sure I'm showing her deference and making sure I'm showing her how much I appreciate her and love her. And yeah, it's interesting because you'll get a lot of negative feedback. I do. I've had a lot of comments in my section and some of the stuff posts that I've done about how much I love my wife from guys like, this is simp mentality. I understand where they're coming from, partly because they don't understand the other side of the boundaries and the accountability and the having self-respect. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it did. It totally did. What do you think women should be looking for? Like when they're, single and they're open and ready for a relationship, what are the signs that a man is going to be a healthy masculine in your life?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to find a man that already knows what his purpose is. And that purpose, I know this is going to sound hard for some women to hear, but that purpose can't be her. That can't be his primary purpose, as we already kind of talked about. He's got to know what he's working towards and what he's doing. And I think one of the most, outside of the idea of safety and being able to provide for a woman, like her what the needs she has in that relationship, the most attractive thing to a woman is when she finds a man that's kicking ass at life, a dude that's just leveling up and knows who he is and has his self-respect and knows what he's going after. It's so intensely attractive for a woman to see that, because I think on some level it does feed that whole security notion. She knows this guy's going to perpetually be leveling up and improving and getting after things. I remember one of my best friend years ago, this is probably 15, 16 years ago. He was dating another one of my friends, a girl that was my friend. So they started dating and they got pretty serious. And at the time we were in college. And so he didn't have a lot of money. He was living out of my basement for a while. And then he finally got a house, but he lived in the unfinished basement. And I'd come over and hang out with him, and he'd be cooking up venison over an open fire in his basement.
Wow.
He drove like in the summertime, he'd ride a scooter, and he had an old tow truck he bought for like $500 in the wintertime. So he just looked like a mess, but I knew this guy. I could see that he was hustling. He's working. He's my best friend to this day. He proposed to her, and then she said yes. And then a few days later, she gave the ring back. And I was privy to all this because I was hearing from both of them. She gave the ring back, and she just didn't feel right about it, that's what the way sometimes it goes, the cookie crumbles. But she would tell me often that her concern was that he wasn't going to be a great provider. And I knew what she was saying on the surface level, where he was at in that moment. He had not gotten to that point. But I also knew him, and I knew he would. I was like, this guy is a stud. So I was trying to kind of talk her through this, but ultimately it didn't work out. Well, fast forward now 20 years later, and that same buddy of mine flies around on private jets, and he's worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, he's absolutely massive success. And so what are you looking for? You're not necessarily looking for a guy that's already arrived and already made it. You're looking for a guy that has the character. He has the ingredients for that. And that starts with a man who knows his purpose. That starts with a man who is focused on his personal development, improvement, leveling up. That starts with a guy that you can trust. If you can't trust someone, this goes both ways, but if you can't trust someone on the small things, you can't trust them on the big things. And so these are like the kind of the big rocks, you have to look for is trust. And you got to look for respect, and you got to look for somebody who's already knows who they are and knows what they're working for. Yeah, and then when you find that in a man, and a man finds that in a woman, now you come together not from a place of need or from a place of like, I'm already not enough. You're coming to this relationship as a healthy individual, and so are they. And now you have the real chance of making a healthy relationship. Unhealthy people make unhealthy relationships. Ooh. Even if one of the people in that relationship is healthy, an unhealthy person will make that relationship unhealthy. So it's really about finding somebody that is healthy, and more importantly, making sure that you're healthy. A lot of people don't lack the self-awareness. They think they're good and they see everything from their own perspective. Exactly. But they're not really aware of the fact that they have a whole lot of toxicity within themselves already, and they're going to go into a relationship and absolutely wreck it.
Yeah, so true. So true. I think self-awareness is like key, because even if you're not perfect, at least you're trying, and you can see that you have flaws that you will work on and you're willing to work on. But that is so true. Like, being in a relationship with someone who can't even see that anything they're doing is affecting the relationship is really just a recipe for disaster.
There's 3 poison pills in a relationship that if you have one of them, it's going to ruin the relationship. And if you have all 3 of them, it's apocalyptic. And the first one is dishonesty, going back to the idea of trust. The other one is disrespect. So criticism, nagging, whatever that looks like not caring about the other person's feelings, disrespect of any kind, is you'll never get your relationship off the ground. And then the third one is deflection. I call them the 3Ds. It's not taking accountability. That's what we're talking about when we say lack of self-awareness. It's zero accountability in the relationship. It's constantly deflecting everything on the other person. It's their fault, the reason why things are the way they are. If you have one of those, you're never going to have a healthy relationship. And so many people have one or multiple of these in the relationships in right now, and they're alone in a relationship. Both people are alone. And I felt that in my first marriage. We were together, but we were absolutely alone. We were not synced up. We weren't connecting. We didn't have respect for each other. We didn't have trust. She didn't trust me, but oddly, I trusted her. I knew who she was. And so I did, but and I guess on some level, she didn't trust me on an emotional level. Anyways, I'm getting off in the weeds, but you have to have those three. One of those three things is going to kill a relationship. And so when you're looking for a healthy relationship, if any of those red flags show up, you have to be ready to like address it right then and there. And if there's not a clear like correction to that, you have to be willing to leave the relationship, because you'll never build on that.
That's so good. Speaking of your past relationship, what do you think the differences are in the way that you show up in this one versus the past one that have made the difference?
So there's a lot of things I could go on and on about it, but one of the biggest things that I learned was that what we're talking about right now was like not tolerating disrespect on any level for myself. Like I wasn't gonna take any kind of disrespect from anybody. And that's not my ego. Like, hey, you have to respect me. It's like, no, I know I'm a good guy. I know I'm going to show up. I know I'm going to do my job. Like, I know that. And I am going to treat my wife now, I'm going to treat her like a queen, but I have to be treated like the same. I have to have the same deference back, or it's not going to work. And in the first marriage, I didn't understand that. I had been conditioned by all of these elements in society, church, family, culture, that essentially when I got into a relationship with a woman, she was my primary purpose. She was my primary focus. I gave up largely I gave up my tribe, my friends. And when she would act disrespectful to me, I thought it was my moral obligation to kind of just take it stoically, to be the emotional punching bag and just kind of let it wash off my back. And for the sake of peace, not try to like disrupt things too much. And that was weakness. And because of that weakness, it only exasperated the problems in that relationship. If I had known how to manage things better when I first got married and understood how to hold boundaries for myself and had self-respect, in that relationship, it potentially could have changed the entire outcome of it. I don't know that it would have. I don't have a crystal ball, but it really might have. I remember a story I listened to on a podcast a number of years ago where this guy was talking about how they had this couples friendship group. And this woman, one of the couples in their group, was going through a divorce. And everybody in the group knew that this woman was just horrible to this guy. Like, she just treated him disrespectfully. She was not a good wife to him. And so they go through a divorce, and then she still kind of stayed in the friendship group. And sometime later, she was getting remarried, and everybody's like, "Oh, great, we're gonna see what happens with this marriage." They're all kind of getting out the popcorn to watch it, what they think is going to be another train wreck. And she marries this guy, and after the honeymoon, they get back, and within a short period of time, she started getting disrespectful to him, and he just walked upstairs. He didn't engage with it. He didn't validate it. He just walked upstairs. And after a while of her kind of huffing and puffing, she goes upstairs, and he's packing up his stuff. They've been married for a week, and he's packing up his stuff. And she goes, "What are you doing?" And he's like, I'm sorry, I made a huge mistake. This isn't going to work. Like, I'm not going to ever be talked to like that again. Like, I didn't deserve that. I'm never going to be talked to like that again. And she's freaking out. And she says, she's scrambling, and she's begging him to stay and to work it out. And so he says, "Okay, I'll stick around, but if this ever happens again, I'm going to leave. I won't stay in this relationship." And this guy telling the story is like 23 years later, they're happily married. They're in this really happy relationship. And one of the things that we miss in this whole falling in love and fairy tale stories in Hollywood is that the most important part of a healthy relationship is accountability, both ways. So I'm telling the story from like the guy's perspective, but this goes both ways. What saves marriages more than anything else is accountability. And because there was accountability immediately baked into that relationship right when it started, before they got too far down too far down the road and too deep into the rabbit hole, there was immediate accountability to that. it completely reoriented that relationship and reoriented this woman. Now this was a guy she could respect because he had boundaries that she couldn't cross. And now she knew what those boundaries were and he was holding them and she knew he was going to hold them. And therefore it completely changed how she treated him and the level of attraction she had for him.
That's incredible. That is such a good story. And like, honestly, I think a lot of people can relate to that too. I think it's so important to have those boundaries and to just, I think what women struggle with a lot is speaking those boundaries to a man and the fear that they will be off put by it. And so a lot of women hold things in because they're scared. If I say this, if I put this boundary here of like, hey, this is what I need in a relationship and you're not giving me that it's going to push them away or scare them off.
Yeah, but I think it's how you articulate it, right? When it's so important that when we are communicating to each other about our boundaries, that we're doing it from a place that's not a personal attack at all on the other person. It's not like you're not doing this and I'm upset. That's going to shut down men and women. Someone comes at you with that kind of heat, you're going to be like, I don't even want to hear this because you're coming at me with disrespect. So it's always got to come from a place of like love and support. Like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Like, I feel like this. I know you're doing your best. I love you. I'm here to support you, but I'm feeling this certain way. Can we talk about that? And if you can do that from a place of encouragement and a place of love and support, it's a lot easier to have those types of conversations. It doesn't guarantee success because, again, there's a lot of unhealthy people that can't hear any kind of accountability or correction at all. And that's never going to be a healthy relationship. But if you're coming at your husband because he's doing something wrong, or you're coming at your wife because she's doing something wrong with some sort of resentment towards them and some sort of like criticism towards them, it's never, ever going to be received well. And, it frankly shouldn't be. Like, you shouldn't tolerate disrespect either way, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I've said that before too. I can handle the truth, but the way that you give me that truth really plays a huge role in how I'm going to receive it, for sure.
Absolutely. So like with my wife and I now, I make sure like anytime, and it's not often, but anytime we're having a conversation about boundaries or something like that, I always want to be coming from a place of like, hey, I'm on your team. I love you. I think you're the most amazing person in the world. There's nobody cooler or better or more awesome than you are. But I'm feeling a certain way. This has been bothering me. This is why. Can we talk about that, kind of walk through that? And it brings her to the table. And she's kind of a unicorn anyways. Like I've
well, that's why you married her.
And I feel I won the lottery. Like early on in our relationship, she would be saying sorry to me about stuff that I wasn't even offended by. Like I was like, why are you saying sorry for that? But she would do that all the time. She was so eager to take accountability. I was like, this is a unicorn. I've never met a woman like this. It's just like so self-aware. And she's so concerned about making sure that she's respectful to me and kind to me and treats me well. Overly so, where I'd be like, baby, you're awesome. You don't need to say sorry for that. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just saying something about how you felt or whatever that, whatever the occasion was. But yeah, to me, just meeting a person that was self-aware and was ready to take accountability was one of these huge green flags early on in our relationship.
Oh, that's so good. That actually gives me a little bit of hope because I definitely in the same way, like I very much want to honor someone and respect them and their boundaries and give them space when necessary. Like I'm very, I guess the word would be, I like to appease people and what they need and want, while also looking at myself and going, okay, I probably could have handled that better. Could have said that better. I enjoy taking accountability for myself because I'm always looking for a way to grow and become better, on my own, but also in relationship too. So I can totally relate to her on that. I say sorry a lot as well.
You know what's interesting, Ashley, is again, we've met for the first time here, but after having gone through the first marriage and when I got into the dating world for a little bit, I was like, I picked up things I never would have picked up without having been married before. I would pick up these cues, and a lot of it was like stuff that you couldn't really even articulate. It would be like a certain energy. You could just feel it and be like, oh, that's a red flag. I sense it now. Like I could see things I couldn't see before. Yeah. But this is a compliment to you. Just talking to you right now, I can sense that type of energy. Yeah, I can feel that you are that type of person. It's a high praise, it's a high compliment. I don't know you personally outside of this conversation we're having, but you can feel that when you can feel that sincerity in people and you can feel that honesty in them and that accountability. And it's an authenticity that is so attractive to everybody.
Thank you. I appreciate that because I've worked very hard to get here. So I very much appreciate that. That brings me to my next question then. What should a man, what is, or what, not what should he, but what are healthy masculine men looking for in a feminine woman? What are those traits that they are most attracted to, that the way a woman can show up in their lives?
Yeah, I think there's a spectrum for that, but I'll speak to what I was looking for. One, I wasn't looking for a woman in her masculine energy. I didn't want a woman to be out there providing. I didn't want a woman out in the workforce. That wasn't attractive to me. And I didn't want a woman that didn't want to have a family. And everybody's got their own things that they want. So again, I'm talking about what I personally wanted was I did not want a woman like when I was dating my wife, um, she's intensely successful. And she's a mom now, and she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but she was intensely successful in her career. She was one of the top sales reps of all time in a huge sales company, and she was making enormous amounts of money. When she came to the table, she brought a lot of money to the table, which wasn't needed, but it was just like a credit to how successful that she had been in her career. And as that was attractive on a level that she was self-developing and she was improving, but it wasn't attractive to me to have her work continually. And so one of the things that was so attractive to me to her was that she wanted to be a traditional mom. She wanted to make a home and she wanted to have children. And as a masculine man, I step out my front door every single day and I go into a very competitive world that's very difficult. I want to come home to a woman that's not been doing the same thing. I want a woman when I come home, she's in her feminine energy, and I come home and when I walk in the front door, my wife always greets me with a hug and a kiss, and she scratches my back. That immediately like puts all of the bullshit from the day out the window. And now I have this shelter from the storms of life. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for a woman that could bring that feminine energy into my life. And I don't want her to provide for me. I don't want her to step into my roles. I don't want her to be my therapist. I don't want any of that stuff. I want a woman that gives me peace. I want a woman that appreciates what I'm doing every single day. She doesn't have to say sorry to me, or she doesn't have to say thank you to me or anything like that. I just want a woman that shows that she loves me and she appreciates me. And when I get home from a long day of work, she puts me back together and she takes care of our children in a miraculous way. She's phenomenal at it. And so those were kind of the main things I was looking for, is like a woman that would be able to make a house into a home, a woman that would raise our children with love and focus and attention, and a woman that would be able to create peace for me when I came home at the end of the day.
I love that. Were there any specific things in the beginning when you met her that were just like major green flags for you before you really truly knew her?
Yeah, the first thing that stood out to me like right away is that she was just so authentic, which is rare for both men and women. I think Dave Chappelle says when you're dating for the first 6 months, you're dating the other person's representative. You're just like, guys, you're not dating her, you're dating her representative. And that goes both ways. And I think a lot of times it's longer than that. It can be, years of dating a representative. You're not actually getting to who the real person is. The highest frequency that we can emit as a human is authenticity, is being exactly who we are. And she was just unapologetically authentic. Not that she was militant about it or difficult about it or abrasive about it. She wasn't. She was just like, this is just who I am. And we just immediately had this authentic communication, even before it became romantic. It was just so fun to talk to her because I was talking to like a real human. And so that was like the first thing that was so attractive to me. And the second thing was that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Like early on, she told me when we were talking, like that's what she wanted most. That was her goal in life, is she wanted to be a mother. She wanted to raise kids. And to me, where I was at, I had 3 kids from my previous marriage. And that was intensely important to me. And also seeing how she interacted with those kids. If there had ever been a moment where I thought she didn't like my kids or there was going to be some difficulty there, I have 50% custody of them. It would have been a deal killer, even if she was amazing in every other area. Like at that, where I was at in my life, I was a father first at that point because I had 3 kids that were on my watch, and they had to come first before anything else. And I never saw that. She just loved my kids and they immediately adored her, and they still do. Like they want to spend time with her outside of me. They want to do things with her. And now we have a child together, and she's just the most amazing mother, and it is so attractive to me to this day. I don't lose sight of that. I'm like, I still wake up every morning and I like pinch myself. I'm like, I'm married to the coolest person on the planet. Like, it's so awesome. And I wish that for everybody. I'm grateful for my first marriage for a lot of reasons, and I don't have any ill will towards my first wife. We work along well together now. She's a great person in so many ways. We were horrible together, but being able to be in that marriage, one of the things that I appreciate most of being in a really bad marriage and now being in a healthy relationship and marriage is that I can see the contrast. I never take my wife for granted now. Like I know what I have, and I'm like, dude, I'm going to celebrate her, and I'm going to continue to talk about her, and try to always be like showing up for her in any way that I can.
I love that so much. How long were you guys together before you were engaged?
And we dated, it was a little over a year. So it was pretty quick. Yeah.
That is pretty quick, but not like too quick.
Yeah. It wasn't like overnight. There was a whole process to it, right? Like really, and especially for me, I had a lot of like, I was like the anti-marriage superstar. I was like, I'm never getting married again.
Really?
I got out of the first marriage, and I wasn't bitter at women. I got out of the first marriage, and I was bitter at the institution of marriage. I was like, I will never put myself in a situation where someone else has control over my life, because when I finally got through the really rough part of the separation and everything else, life got so good and so peaceful. I was like, the only thing that can disrupt this is getting married again. So I was like, I had no intention of getting married again. But she was just too cool, man. I just, over that period of time, my barriers went down, and she was also, it wasn't like she was in a rush to get married either. So it was a process for both of us. It wasn't like she was waiting. She was 30 when she got married. She'd had 29 when we got married. She had plenty of opportunities to have been married before.
Right.
So she wasn't in a rush. I just think it was the right timing for her finally. And it was now kind of like becoming the right timing for me to consider being in a relationship, and the stars lined up and it just worked out.
Yeah. I can relate to that big time. I went through a divorce a couple of years ago, and I was like, never again. And again, I wasn't like bitter towards men per se, but I was just like that. When you're not in the right marriage, it's a horrible feeling. And it does feel like you're kind of trapped and controlled, and like that. It's a scary thought to ever be in that situation again, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's very few things I think in this life worse than being in a bad relationship, stuck in a bad relationship. Like it's just soul killing.
It really is. It really is. And it's like one of the most important things I'm learning myself is to see the signs of that early on, and just not even put yourself through it again,
right.
Which is so hard, but you just have to. You have to trust yourself and trust who you are and know what you deserve. But I noticed in one of your videos, you had a hat on that said "Make Men Great Again." And I just thought that was the greatest thing I've ever seen. So how do we make men great again?
So I think it's a very complex issue. I think, there's been an attack on masculinity for so long. And, because of that, nobody's happier for it, right? Nobody's better off now, no matter what the rhetoric is out there, no matter what empowered women say, like, I don't need a man or whatever. Nobody's happier for having a lack of masculinity in society. And I think ultimately the biggest risk to society is weak men, because when weak men are prevalent, everything starts to kind of fall apart. It's strong men that keep the world turning and keep the lights on and keep people protected and keep the streets safe and keep, a home safe and protect that. So we all need strong men in society to make a society healthy. And I think the problem with it now is that because masculinity has been demonized for so long, and because men have been conditioned to be nice, to be weak by so many different elements in society, that you're seeing the complete erosion of the traditional family. And what that looks like now is that women are generally raising kids mostly.
Yeah.
Either because a man has abandoned the family, or because he's been pushed out of the family, or he's just like a bystander that's not really participating in the raising of the children. And so you have boys that are growing up, raised by a woman, going into a school system that's mostly women. Yeah. And they come into adulthood, and this is what I was talking about with the Lost Boys. They have no idea what it means to be a man. They have no framework for it. And it's not their fault. They just haven't been taught that, and they haven't been shown what it means to actually be a man. And what they're actually looking for is a woman to replace their mother. They're looking for a woman to tell them, to give them purpose, to tell them what to do, give them responsibilities. And this isn't attractive to anybody. And so I think that we got to start right there fundamentally, of like trying to bring families back together and getting fathers back in the home. And that's a very complex issue, but I think that's where it starts. We need more men raising more men.
Yes, so good. I love that so much. When it comes to the role that you have played in your life as a father, as a businessman, as a husband, how do you find the balance? Like, how do you stay in your masculinity while also providing space for the other things that need you in your life?
So I think there's 7 aspects of masculinity, and as a man, there's a book called As a Man Thinketh that I recommend everybody read. It's a very short read. I've probably read it 100 times in the course of my life. But James Allen says weakness cannot exist in a power evolving universe, and what that means to me as a man is that there's no place for me to be complacent. I can't just get relaxed and comfortable and let things kind of flow. We live in a world of entropy where what you have is going to be taken away from you if you're not working at it. And so it's not an easy thing to hear, but it's the truth. As men, we have to be leveling up in every aspect of what it means to be a man. And that's a lot of work, and it requires a lot of heart. Like, you got to be committed to that process. And then you have to just learn how to prioritize things. For me, I can be more flexible because I own my own businesses. So it allows me to be, present at my kids' basketball game while at the same time sending text messages and emails and taking phone calls. So I can kind of multitask. That helps me to do that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, my family is the most important thing to me, my wife and my children. And so there are times when I have to work and you have to miss some things. That's just realities of life. That's where the rubber meets the road. But ultimately, if it comes down to what I have to sacrifice for on a family, it's always going to be for my family. It's always going to be the family first. And so, and ultimately, that for me, that's just where I get all of my fulfillment, most of my fulfillment, my joy is from my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my kids. So, I don't know if that exactly answers your question, at least not like the nuts and bolts in concept. That's how it works out for me. And so I try to make sure I'm present for everything that I can be present for in my kids' lives, in my wife's life. I can make sure I make space for her so she has her own time to do things that she needs to do. I always want her to be healthy. I want her to be in fighting shape. And so that includes her having relationships outside of our marriage, which is super healthy. We've gotten conditioned to think that you're supposed to give those up. You're supposed to sacrifice your tribes when you get into relationships. But this is true for women, I'm sure, but it's certainly true for men. Good tribes make good men. And that's where you take a lot of the crap that you're going through on a day-to-day basis is to your tribe. You don't take it to your family. You don't come home at the end of a hard day and unload all the crap that you had in the home that you're trying to protect from all the, everything out there. You don't come and disrupt that peace and that harmony. That doesn't mean you don't communicate with your wife about things, but I'm really careful not to come home and unload my crap on her. Like I take the stuff that I'm dealing with, like at work and business, I take that to my buddies because they can relate to it and they understand it. And I'm not destroying their peace, and I'm not destroying the peace of my home by taking it to my friends. And so it's really, really important to have a healthy group of friends that you can communicate with. And then it takes a lot of pressure off the relationship. So the person isn't the sole provider for everything that you need emotionally or, whatever else. Like, we need to have outlets. I think that's really, really healthy. And you have to be careful what those outlets look like, because bad influences are not going to be healthy for a relationship or for you. But having good people in your life is intensely important. Good people outside of your relationship with each other.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. If there are any men listening that kind of feel like you had said, just a little bit lost about where they are in life right now, and they know that they want to end up in a healthy relationship and they want to be in their fully in their masculine, what are those steps that they should be taking?
Well, I think the first thing is they have to really decide what they want out of life. And that's not something you do in an afternoon, right? It may take you years to kind of figure that out. And that evolves too. It's not something that's stagnant, but it's really one thing that you can do as a man that's been helpful for me. And I've coached guys on this, is to say, what is the ideal version of who you are? Like, what does that guy look like? If you could wave a magic wand and make you into anything, what would those characteristics be? Like the most powerful, amazing version of you. And imagine that. What are those characteristics? What are those qualities? What does that person look like? What is he doing? What does he sound like? And then start to figure out how to develop that, right? It gives you a framework, because most guys don't have a framework. And again, going back to this lost boy concept, they don't have any idea what a man looks like. So that may start with you looking at other men. You may just have to look at other guys and say, hey, I want to be more like that guy. That guy's got his shit together. You know, he knows what he's doing. Like, he's successful in business, successful with his family, whatever that looks like. I want to be more like that person. And then you surround yourself with influences. So we can all change ourselves. The beautiful thing about life is change is actually not that difficult to do. It just requires a lot of focus, and it requires rewriting programming. And you do that by who you listen to, what you read, and who you surround yourself with. That's what you do. Like, you do those three things and you will naturally start to evolve into that type of person. We are the product of the influences around each other, around ourselves. So for men out there that are really struggling, first decide what it is that you want to be. And again, that may be some other person. That may be a mentor, maybe a coach, or maybe an uncle. It may be something that you're looking at. I want to be like, or a guy on social media. You're looking at, like, you know, these people that are like influencers on social media. Like, I love how this person talks, what they're doing with their life. And then you really inundate yourself with, I call it software. This is all biological technology that we're operating through. And this is a processor. And we're all operating on some level of programming. And a lot of the programming we're operating on isn't very good. And so you need to rewrite that programming. Otherwise, you're always kind of trying to white knuckle your way into some change. And that doesn't ever last very long. And so you have to fundamentally rewrite the software, rewrite who you are with software. And that's these influences. And so decide what you want to be, and then accumulate as many opportunities to gain that type of influence in your life. And one example for me, like on a practical level, like just a little tip is, like, when I go to the gym, people ask me, why do I go to the gym? Like, why do I work out so hard at the gym? Because I go pretty hard at the gym. I'm always like, it's cheaper than therapy. That's where I like work out my demons. I go to the gym.
It is therapy.
It is, exactly. It's cheaper and better than therapy, in my opinion. So I go to the gym for a lot of different reasons, but that's probably the primary one, is like, it keeps me even kill. Like, I get into the gym and I can work out all my stress. But when I'm in the gym now, I used to listen to music. Now I listen to podcasts and I listen to Audible books on things in my life that I want to change, or I want to improve, I want to level up on. And it makes a huge difference. I'll spend an hour in the gym, hour and a half in the gym, listening while working out, listening to stuff that's leveling me up. And I come into the day, I do that. I work out in the morning. I come into the day in fighting shape. Like, I'm ready to like level up. I'm ready to make some changes. I'm ready to organize my life better. I'm ready to make the world a better place. Like, you come in, you know, guns blazing. And so that's just one thing that you can do, is just be really conscientious about the software. Stop scrolling, stop watching mindless entertainment, stop just like, you know, sitting on the couch being complacent. Like, be doing stuff that's making you better, and particularly getting software in your head that's going to help you change to become that ideal version of yourself.
That's so good. And actually, I think that applies for women too. I don't think that's just a masculinity thing at all. I think that's just great advice all around, honestly.
Most of this stuff, I'm just talking from a man's point of view, but most of this is generalized to both men and women, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, where can people find you? And what is something that you have your community, and you're going to start your podcast soon. Where can they find those things?
So Adam Allred Official on social media, come be part of the party. And then yet to be announced what we're going to call this show that we're going to drop on YouTube. So I don't have that yet. We're working on that right now, but we'll have a whole show that we're dropping. But yeah, we'll be announcing that on social media. So for anybody interested in being part of the party, come check it out. Love to have you here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It was such a good convo that I even needed to hear, so thank you for your time. And I love your family. I love your social media. Sounds like I want to be friends with your wife now. And so, yeah, this was great. And I'm so grateful for your time.
Likewise. Thanks for taking the time to have me on your show. Really grateful for this. I love these types of conversations. And yeah, my wife is amazing. So if you ever are looking for a guest, she's got like she hates when I volunteer her, but she's too cool to keep a secret. So
I love that.
If you ever need another guest, like she's pretty awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Send me her info. I would love to have her.
Okay. Yeah. I'll connect you guys up.
Well, thank you again and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Ashley. You too. Till next time.